Hello YouTube, welcome back to my channel. So from the last draw, we left from the point where we created we talked about template inheritance and some passing in conditions into our changer template. Okay, so in this draw we're going to look at how to put a bit of styling to our web page. Mostly we're going to focus on how to develop our model, but before we develop our model, by the model I mean our database, we're going to store in the expenses and different stuff, and then we'll pull the data out and then be able to plot our graphs. So that's what we're going to be doing in this draw. But for now, before we do that, let's go and actually give do some UI job here. We're going to give some navigation bar to our web application. So just go to Google. We're going to be using a CSS library called Bootstrap. So just go to Google and search for Bootstrap, and then click on the first link that you find. Okay, so this should bring you to the official Bootstrap page. Click on Get Started. It should bring you to this page. Okay, now that you're in this page, you just go to CSS and then you copy the CSS link, and this is a CDN. CDN stands for Content Delivery Network. Means that you don't have to download anything. It's going to be delivered to you through the internet. So you just have to paste the link there and to get for you that content through their content delivery network. Okay, so now that that is done, let's go ahead and actually go to our JS. Okay, you're going to copy JS. Now, by the way, if you don't know what Bootstrap is, you can just go and read about it. It's just very popular framework for creating responsive designs for all applications, for all device sizes. Really just good styling and stuff like that. You don't have to do a lot of work writing your own CSS. In this draw, we don't have to spend a lot of time writing our own CSS. We just have to get introduced to what Flask is, build a simple dashboard, stuff like that. You don't want to go into the CSS and HTML. We're doing like a front-end development or styling development course. We just want to do something and we don't want to focus mostly on the CSS. That's why we're going to be using Bootstrap. Okay, so just go ahead and copy the Java JS link, and then go to your page and paste it here at the very bottom, just before the body tag. Okay, so paste that in there, and let me make sure that I indent this. Okay, so and make sure I indent that. So we have that right there. So now that we have that, we're going to go ahead and actually give you some navigation bar. Okay, I've already created navigation bar, so I'm just going to bring my navigation bar code here, and I'm simply going to copy this part out. I'm going to copy this part, and when I'm going to paste it right here, just before the body, the opening body tag. Just after the opening body tag, I'm going to paste it right there. Okay, so this is going to create for us the navigation bar. Before we do that, let me just undo that, and then I'm going to create something here just called type in as with me. Don't worry if you don't know more about Bootstrap, just type in as I do. So this code is available on GitHub, so you can find the code there if you don't familiar with Bootstrap. Okay, so you just have to say container dash fluid. You're going to create a fluid container, and then in there you can actually now paste whatever we have copied. Okay, so now that you have pasted that, let's go ahead and actually do creating one more div. So we're going to call it row, and then you're going to inside of this row, we're going to paste in a couple of things. You're going to pass in a couple of things. So we're going to say row, and then we're going to say justify dash content. It should be the content, and then dash center, just like this. And then in here we need to create a column. So we're going to say dot col. This is going to be dash this is going to be md dash 10, just like this, and then we're going to press enter, and then in here we're going to copy and paste in our body opening and closing blocks. Okay, we'll cut that and I'm going to paste it here, and then I'm going to fix that indentation. So I'm going to indent this to the match that indentation. Okay, so now I have that right there. Okay, we have our opening and our closing divs, and everything is in place. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and actually check if our server is running. Yes, it is. We can go back to our site, and then we try to refresh it. Now we can have it. We have that navigation bar right there. Okay, so now let's change this to be our custom. Okay, now we can change that to be anything you want. So just come here and change it to anything you want. So let's call it data links, just like that. I love the name data links. Okay, so I'm going to call it data links, and I'm going to just refresh this, and this has changed to come data links. Okay, so now that we have that done, let's go ahead and actually begin to build our site. Now to begin our model, rather, sorry, first of all we need to install one more library called Flask-SQLAlchemy. So I'm going to stop this, Control C to kill the server, and I'm going to do pip, make sure your virtual environment is activated, pip3 install, and then you're going to do Flask _SQL SQLAlchemy. So the word is a bit difficult to type out, so that's the word, the library we're going to install. Now I've already installed it prior to making this tutorial, so we don't waste much time. So it's called pip install Flask-SQLAlchemy. Okay, watch out for the spelling. So now that we have that installed, we can just go back to our application, and inside of our application right here, right, we need to go into our __init file, and then in here we need to import the library that you've just imported. So from Flask_SQLAlchemy, I'm going to import this is uppercase SQL just get that SQL and then alchemy. The rest is lowercase, so the casing is a bit tricky here, so just watch out for that. So now that you have created the SQLAlchemy, below the app in instantiation, you're going to say db, which is going to be an instance for a database. You're going to call it Flask-SQLAlchemy. You're going to pass in the app right there. So now that you have done that, let's go ahead and set some configurations. So you need to set these configurations for security issues, for security purposes. Okay, so now we're going to set our configurations right here. So what you're going to do is that you're going to go in here, and you're going to just above the db instantiation, you're going to say app, and you're going to say .config, and you're going to set the config value for we're going to set two config values. The first one is going to be secret key, and then the first one is going to be SQLAlchemy database URL. So we're going to go to SQL, all this is uppercase, SQLAlchemy _database _URI. Okay, not URL, URI. Okay, not L. So now that you have done that, you're going to create in here, I'll create the path to our SQLite database. So it's going to create an SQLite database, and then you're going to store it here. So you have to say SQLite : three forward slashes, and you have to say the name of the database. So we're going to call it expenses db. Okay, so that's what you have to type in. Okay, so now that you have done that done, you're going to set another configuration called config. This is going to be our secret key. Now our secret key is going to protect our application against certain security attacks, which is called a CRF token attack, which is just cross-site request for direct token attack that can be launched against your application. So you need to put in this key to be secure. Now this key is mostly kept in a virtual environment, but for this case you can just put it in here for simplicity. So in the future, or if you want to deploy application, make sure that you move this ideally to a virtual environment. Now this can be anything, so you can just type in some random things on your keyboard, and then just some random things just to keep it yeah, just going to leave it like that. But ideally what you do is that you generate a token hex. So you just use the secret library in Python, generate the token hex and paste it in here. But for now I'm just going to type in some random things to keep our security. So this acts like a bit of password to our application and protects it against several security attacks. So now that you have looked at that, make sure that you have this Flask-SQLAlchemy instantiated. Let's go back to our application right here. Inside of this one, you're going to create something known as models, which is lowercase models.py. So models.py, instead of models.py, you're going to say from application, you're going to be importing db that you've just instantiated. So now that you've imported a db, what you're going to do right now is we need to create a class where we're going to have attributes. Now attributes of each attributes of the class will be the different columns within our model, or within our table. So we're going to call it income expenses, and then I'm going to call it db.model. So I'm just going to inherit from db.model. So now that you have inherited, you're going to go create a column. So the first one is going to be db.column. So this is going to be db.column, and this is going to be db.integer, because it's going to be an integer. And I'm going to set this to be primary underscore key equals to true. So this is going to be our primary key field. So now that you have that, you can go ahead and actually create another field, which is called type, and type is just going to be the type of entry, whether it's an income or an expense. So again, because this will be a string, and the default is going to be an income, just like that. And then we're going to have the nullable to be false, so means that it can be nullable, it can be empty. So nullable is false, just like that. And then we need to go and create category. So the category is whether it's used for the money was got obtained from whether it's salary or it was used to buy rent, pay for rent or something like that. So that's what the category is going to store, and you're going to give it sorry, you need to specify the size of the strings, by the way. So you need to come up here and you also need to specify the size of this. Okay, let's save it to be 30. Okay, so now that we have that there, and then we can go ahead and actually create our nullable, and then we're going to say nullable is going to be false because we don't want to be empty, and we want a default for this too as well, default. And then the default is going to be rent, just like that. And then we're going to create another category called date, and then this is going to be storing our date. So we're going to go db.column, and then we're going to go date time. Make sure you get the casing right. This is going to be date time, and then it's going to be nullable equals to be false, right? We don't want it to be empty. So now nullable is false. We're going to say default. We're going to give it a default value, which is just going to be date time. And I'm going to import date time just in a second. So we're going to say default is date time dot utc now. Okay, so I'm going to pull up here, and I'm going to say import date time. So we're going to import date time, and we're going to say datetime.utc. Now this is a function, but you don't call it, you just have to pass it in. Okay, don't call it. So now that you have, we're also going to store the amount, whatever the amount is. So we're going to be db.column, and they're going to say db.integer, because it's going to be storing integer, right? We can also say decimal or something, decimal, but let's just leave it to be integer. And then you're going to say nullable, and then you can research on the different data types. You can say this to be integer if you want. Okay, but for now just keep it to be nullable. Okay, so now that we have that value, we're going to go ahead and actually yeah, we have our database already set up. We can create a dev and underscore str here, and then you're guys going to return self dot we can give it dot let's say date. You can call it self.id if you call the method. Okay, so now we have that set up there. Okay, so yeah, so now that you have finished writing that done the str method, let's go ahead and actually I've just put some errors here. This is supposed to be actually date and not data, and we need to also import from date.datetime. Okay, so we need to also say from date time import dates. Okay, so that's those are the errors that I exported right now. So now that you have that, let's go ahead and jump into our terminal. Again, it will be open up in Python here, and you're going to say from we need to say from application, we're going to be importing db. Okay, this is just a warning, ignore it. So just db.create. Let me just also import from application. Let me just also import this from application, application.models, right? From the models we want to import income expenses, like this. We're going to import this too, and then we're going to do db.create underscore db, and db.create all. So this is going to create all the tables. So if you go back to into our root directory, you can see that we don't have any database file right here. Okay, so MySQLite is just an in file database. It just creates a file. The data is stored within that file. So if you run this, it's actually going to create a file. So if you might have noticed, the file just popped up here, and it's called expense.db. Okay, so now that we have that there, let's go ahead and actually begin to create some data. So we're going to call it entry. Let's call it entry n1 entry. Let's call it give it a more descriptive name, entry1. This is going to be an instance of income expenses, and then in here we're going to put in the type, and the type is just going to be says income, and then the amount, let's say amount is 4,000, and then the category is just going to be let's say that we are getting it from salary, right? From the salary category. So we're not going to provide in the date and the ID, because the date and the ID they have default values, and the date has default values, and then the primary key is going to be incremented automatically, right? So we're going to run that, and then we're going to create a similar one. This is going to be from this is going to be an expense. It's going to be rent. Let's change this to be 3, and then this should be expense. So of type is expense. Okay, so I'm going to run this, and I'm going to do let me just keep it to, let me just make this to be salary again. Salary gets 6,000, and then income as well. This should be, oh my god, I've repeated twice to okay, 1 I mean. So I'm just going to make sure that I don't repeat the 1 again. Make sure, why was that? So this should be entry 3, and then this should be okay, we can use this one. It's called feeding expenses, and that we can use that, and then we can create one for entry 2. It's going to be of let's call it so salary, and then we're going to call it a salary to be let's say 7,000, and it's going to be an income, right? So this is going to be an income. So this will be it's going to be an income, and then sorry, income, and then this should be expenses. This should be 2, right? Entry 2. So we have 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to now insert into our data. So we're going to say db.session.add, and then you're going to be adding entry 1, which is just that instance of the db.session.add. okay, I got the spelling wrong, so this is just 1s. And I'm also going to do db.session.add, and I'm going to do entry 2. Let me just clear the screen here and make this bigger a bit so that you guys can see. Okay, so I'm going to go again db.session .entry 1. This will be entry 2. Sorry, just scroll up here. This should be entry 2. Okay, so this should be entry 3 actually. So this should be entry 3, right? Yeah, so run that. So it is going to go there. So now that we have added it to our db.session, we have not actually added it to our database actually. So to add it to our actual database, you need to write db.session. So when you say db.session.commit, and then you're going to add a commit. So we're going to commit all our changes to our database. Now this has committed all our changes to our database. So now all our existing queries have been added to our database. So now we can go and actually write entries, and then we're going to get all that entries back. So we're going to call it table.expenses. We call it income expenses, and we're going to do a query. So that's how you get able to write the query.all. So this is going to return to us everything. So if I run for entries in for entry in entries, right? So all the entries, what we're going to do, we're going to print entry dot, we're going to access all the types, entry dot type. We can also print entry dot we can also print entry dot category, which category is cheese category, and then you can also print the entry dot amount, and you can also print the entry dot date. Okay, so so entry dot date. Basically, you can print all the fields that come there, so that are within our database. So I'm just going to put this in an f string, and then we use an f string instead. So I'm going to put this in double quotes, and then this is going to be an f string. This is going to be I wrap these guys in curly braces. If you don't know what an f string is, you can google what an f string in Python is. So this just allows us to write things to format our text much more easier. So you can see now if I run this code, it's just going to output the entry for all of us. So you can see the expenses. The first entry is of type expense. It is for rent, it is farming for, it is 3,000. the date was that one. It looks like we didn't add one entry in there, so I think we probably skipped over it, but that's no issue. But now you can just see how you can be able to access different entries from the different queries. So that's how you can be able to get those queries. So you can even say income expenses dot query, get a query again, dot get, and then we can get you passing the id dot first, which is going to return to us the first element of this. So income expenses, so I made that error, sorry guys. This is income expenses. Okay, I got this completely wrong. Okay, so this is actually income expenses. Oh my god, I made a lot of typos today. So income expenses, and then I'm going to just clear the screen, and then I'm going to run that. So income expenses dot first. Okay, so I got that error wrong. Let me just try dot all, and then I run this. So this is going to we don't also get back dot all. I think this one just returns to us one of those elements, and the element is that specific one. So the specific one we can get dot dates, right? We can return to us the date, and we can also get the type. so you can also get the type and then stuff like that. That's how you can be able to insert data into a database, query the data, pull it out, and be able to do stuff with it. So you just create an entry to create an instance of the table, and then you add it, and then later you do the db.session.com. So that's how we are able to add data to our database. So now in the next tutorial, we're going to see how to create a form, and then allow users to be able to enter data into the database using a UI, because users don't use terminals, right? So this is going to be covering in the next tutorial. If you like this tutorial and you're enjoying this series so far, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more informative videos like this. Thanks for watching. See you in the next tutorial. Keep safe.